Good to have you back. Greenhouse emissions continue to headline a barrage of environmental challenges facing humanity. Every attempt at forging a global common front against these harmful gases have one way or the other been thwarted by conflicting regional or political interest. Now, the prospects look even scarier for developing countries, many of which lack the capacity to deal with the aftermath of the environmental and ecological impact of climate change. Chidera Ejiofor is the Chief Executive Officer of Green Force Group, an eco-friendly company that is dedicated to enhancing renewable energy solutions across Africa. He joins us now to look at this critical subject. Good to have you, Chidera.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Very good. Now, where are we with eco-friendly energy solution in Nigeria and Africa as a whole? And alternative energy seem to still be at its infancy when you take a closer look at it.
I would say if we were to classify it in terms of where we are, I would say we are at the kindergarten stage. We're barely next to nothing in terms of, we've done barely next to nothing in terms of moving from carbon-driven energy sources to green energy sources in Africa and Nigeria precisely. However, we are taking baby steps, and I believe with the new developments coming up, the new policies enrolled, the support from NGOs and other international organizations, the last climate conference which was held in Egypt, the initiatives that have been brought up to push for governments with higher economics and strong financial institutions to throw down support to Africa for us to move from the carbon-driven energy sources to green energy sources means we'll be taking a lot of improvements in the next coming years. And I believe by 2030, Africa will be in a very good position.
Hopefully.
Now, let's look at Nigeria. When COP27 was going on, we tried to look at a breakdown of the emissions in Nigeria, where they're coming from. And one of the predominant sources is cooking with fire, which is what most of the population does, as we know that majority of this country is rural. And in an African context, majority of the continent is rural until date. Now, I know when we speak about cities, it's easy to talk about using solar and using inverters and converting to all renewable energy sources. But where's the conversation going with regards to the average African who's still cooking with wood fire and is contributing to carbon emissions just by trying to survive, trying to eat daily?
Very true. That's a very valid point you've raised, and I think presently if we take a closer look into the renewable energy industry, we'll find out there are several initiatives. Like we have the Rural Electrification Agency, REA, and we have the Nigerian Electricity Electrification Project. This is empowering rural communities that are not connected to the grid, that have no access to electricity, and are probably living off charcoal and firewood sources to provide good meals for their families. So we are having projects where we set up grids and mini grids. Mini grids can go as high as 20 or 40 kilowatt systems that can provide for as much as about 100 homes in a rural community, and at the same time equip them with renewable energy compliant home appliances that they can use to meet up with their daily needs. However, I must still insist that the electricity being generated for the major cities is the biggest factor of contribution to the carbon-driven energy sources in Nigeria. For every time we generate about 2 kilowatt hour of electricity, I believe we also generate up to a pound of carbon dioxide. So the moment we understand that electricity generation, which comes from burning fossil fuel and burning coal to heat up the turbines and generate electricity, this is a major source of the present state of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere.
If you don't mind me asking, Chidera, despite the fact that in this part of the world, especially the issue of electric power supply, we're barely, generating enough to cater for 200 million plus Nigerians. So how is this factor contributing to the point you just made now?
So let me now be precise. We understand that we generate. The problem I believe we have is the distribution and to use everything that is generated. So in the raw generation is what we're talking about. We generate and we even give to other countries in my memory. Serves me right. So we generate a lot, but the infrastructure to receive everything we've generated and ensure this is evenly distributed across the 36 states and the capital is the main challenge we have.
Now, a lot of people are looking at climate change as almost a form of neocolonialism because it's sent African leaders back to the West with our begging bowls to say, we can't afford to do this. What's the way forward for Africa? Are there any African solutions to the problems that we're experiencing due to climate change and needing to shift to renewable energy? So,
first of all, I think anyone thinking this is neocolonial should take a bigger look and do some more research. When we talk about global warming, we're talking about drought, we're talking about high ocean levels, we're talking about severe storms, we're talking about health issues. So this is a global issue. Africa right now is in a good position because we're in the sub-Sahara. So we can as well just tap into solar because we have better sunlight than other places in the world. But however, people must take a closer look to ask themselves the question, why are all these things happening? Recently, we saw the virus that was discovered because the ice that has been melting for the past, let's say, 100 years, finally got to a level where the scientists could dig in to see something that has been buried for 45,000 years. Trust me, that is just the beginning. Things are melting in the North Pole because of the global warming situation. So it's the effort of every human to see, how am I contributing to support this global warming initiative? We must first of all reduce carbon emission. We must support electric-driven cars. We must support appliances that don't require so much energy, that are energy conservative, that can work with renewable energy sources. We must as well support renewable energy initiatives in our rural communities. It's not necessarily just the government. It's a communal effort. It's everyone putting hands together to ensure you want to get a freezer, you get a freezer that consumes less power. You want to get a car that is electric or hybrid. So that's where we start from. So I must say that we Africans must not look to the West for support every time. We must take what we can get and use what we have. We have a lot of farmlands, we have a lot of trees that can help to offset CO2. So we must encourage planting of trees. We must encourage people to go against going back to the old ways of burning coal and fuel, diesel, burning tires. We should try to reduce such and even compensate. Our governments must come up to compensate. In the Western world, if you're taking in solar and renewable energy systems in your house, there's some form of compensation. And also because it's quite, should I say, it's quite pricey, there's some form of rebates that is given, and also payment plan is being distributed by the government to ensure that people can at least afford to have this in their houses.
Very good, Chidera. But talking about the downside of these innovations regarding renewable technology that most people don't talk about is the issue of the impact of e-waste, especially disposal and recycling. So how is this impacting the drive towards alternative energy and,
okay, so
when you talk about lithium batteries?
I would come in and say this. It's the greater good. Or it's the greater bad, however. So we must mine lead to have batteries. We must mine lithium to have the new batteries. So these operations would not, if the batteries are produced, if you compare what is being generated in terms of burning fossil fuel and what is being generated when we use renewable energy, you would see that the difference in the two, it's far better for us to stick to mining lithium and mining lead. For instance, in our company, we reuse, we recycle. Because for every battery that's out of life, the plastics are being turned into plastic pellets, the lead dust is being sold to factories, and the lead is being exported back to the West. So this initiative shows we as well, in our own small space, are trying to reduce the burning of carbon in any way. Renewable energy is always a far better option than fossil fuel.
Now, before you came, Nia and I were discussing the, shall I call it, the phenomenon of leapfrogging. And you mentioned 2030, which is, I mean, honestly, tomorrow. Realistically, where are we in terms of being able to get a significant amount of the African continent, transferred from these harmful emissions, carbon emissions, and so forth. Zero emission, I believe, is what we're going for.
By 2050.
By 2050.
For zero emission.
For zero emission. And then 2030 is the goal for renewable energy.
Yes.
Where are we with those two milestones realistically?
Realistically?
Yes.
Still very far, but with the right support from the government, which is presently ongoing, and the collaboration between the NERC, Electricity Regulatory Commission, the DISCOs, and the renewable energy companies in the country, I believe the result for 2020 can be achieved if we put all hands on deck. Because this would mean we need to empower at least over 1 million homes within a 12-month space. So if by 2030 we have up to at least 10 million homes under renewable energy, I would say at least this is a milestone that I'll be very proud of in the country.
All right, let's reflect a little on regulation of key players like you in the renewable energy sector. How would you assess that currently in Nigeria?
I would say presently it's still people feel there are a lot of renewable energy companies. I think it's still not enough, practically speaking. Because if you look at what we have, how many communities? There are so many communities that the NEC program is meant to empower at least 300,000 people with renewable energy, supports over 50,000 businesses with renewable energy. In Lagos, for instance, we don't have business centers that are running off grid. We don't have server rooms. We don't have people with small businesses that have renewable energy solution to solve all their energy problems. So we're still very far from it, but I would say we need more hands on deck. We need technical support. We need more renewable energy enlightenment in our schools. Even renewable energy courses can be implemented in our educational syllabuses to educate the kids. Why most times people in GSS 1, GSS 2, GSS 3 have no idea presently what it takes to operate a renewable energy system. But if we have this implemented in our educational system, I'm sure come 2050, we would have a lot of renewable energy companies to support what we have presently. We need more help. Most importantly, we need help from the government.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because we have seen the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, has been on a charm offensive with regards to engaging the world at large and making sure that Nigeria is committed to climate change and the various milestones that the rest of the world is taking on. As somebody who owns a renewable energy company, do you feel that support? Is it trickling down, or is it still very much at a legislative level?
To be honest, it's trickling down, but it's trickling down in drops. So we would want more support from the government. We would want more discussions in this sector to see how far we can go. Presently, the government has done very well setting up a rural electrification agency, having the Nigerian electrification program, an agenda to support renewable energy companies, empower rural communities, empower places that have never seen electricity since since independence of Nigeria, or even before, prior to that. So I would say we need the government to also come down to state level and have policies that are well driven to support people moving from carbon energy sources to green energy sources. Once there's incentives of the government, once there's some form of incentive for any human in any activity, there is more purpose. There is more cooperation. There is more willingness to do. So I would say it's these policies that are going to drive the change. So we need the vice president, while they state the policies, they should also push down and hammer down on implementation, carrying the citizens along, encouraging them.
You're right, implementation is the key word. Chidera Ejiofor, CEO, Green Force, it's good to have you with us on Newsday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.